A herd of wild boars begins to appear in the farming area in noticeable numbers, moving in small groups while still maintaining a clear sense of coordination. They enter from multiple directions, then quickly spread across the entire area. Once inside, the herd starts digging and turning over the top layer of soil. Patches of earth are flipped one after another, while the surrounding crops gradually become affected and begin to lean and collapse. The activity happens over a short period of time, but leaves behind obvious traces. Although the level of damage is not yet severe in the early stage, the initial signs indicate that the area is starting to be impacted by a well-organized group of animals. Over time, the frequency of the herd's appearances begins to increase significantly. They return to the same area repeatedly, forming a pattern of recurring activity. The affected zone is no longer limited to the original spots, but gradually expands into nearby areas. Plots of land that were previously disturbed continue to be dug up again, keeping the soil in a constant state of disruption. When humans appear, some individuals react quickly and move away, while others maintain a distance and observe. This shows that the herd not only operates as a group, but also has the ability to adapt quickly to its surroundings. When camera footage is reviewed more closely, an unusual pattern begins to emerge. The boars are not moving randomly, but are following specific routes. In multiple recordings, they repeat the same paths when entering and leaving the area. The spacing between individuals remains consistent, showing a structured movement pattern. This behavior repeats over several days without significant change. From this, it becomes clear that the herd's activity is not spontaneous, but follows a predictable pattern, opening up the possibility of anticipating their movement. TO verify this observation. The area is surveyed from above using a helicopter. From a wide aerial view, the disturbed ground appears as long, continuous strips. These strips are not isolated, but connect to form clearly defined movement corridors. Some areas show a higher density of disturbance, indicating key gathering points for the herd. When compared with the earlier camera data, these routes align almost perfectly. This confirms that the boars are moving along fixed corridors, providing a solid basis for selecting precise intervention points. Based on the identified movement routes, traps are placed directly along the corridors the herd frequently uses. The surrounding environment is left unchanged to avoid creating any noticeable differences. Bait is distributed from the outside, gradually leading into the trap area. This setup forms a natural path that allows the herd to approach without altering their usual direction. The main bait is placed at the center, where it has the strongest attraction. Over time, this area gradually becomes a familiar feeding spot for the herd.
Oh, shoot. That is stupid. And, there we go. All right.
Process.
During subsequent returns, the boars begin approaching the trap area along the established bait trail. At first, only a few individuals enter to explore. When no danger is detected, others quickly follow. The number of animals inside increases in waves, and the herd gradually moves deeper into the central area. Once the majority of the herd is inside and gathered around a food source, the activation moment is chosen. The trap system closes quickly, blocking all exits. The herd reacts immediately, but is unable to escape the enclosed area. After the trap is activated, the system is quickly checked to ensure it remains stable. The herd is contained inside and handled according to the prepared plan. The transport process is carried out carefully to minimize risks. Controlling the population helps reduce pressure on the farming area. Afterward, the area gradually stabilizes, limiting repeated damage in the time that follows.
As the on-site coordinator of a rapid response team, he had handled numerous emergency situations. But what had just unfolded in this suburban area still left a heavy feeling.
Golly!
Steel structures trembled violently, and the ground seemed to pulse under the weight of tons of muscle. It all began when cornfields were flattened after just a few nights, forcing the wild boar herd to abandon their familiar feeding grounds and spill into residential areas. At around 8 a.m., an urgent video was sent to the control center. In the middle of a busy street, a wild boar suddenly burst out from a blind corner and launched a direct attack on a pedestrian. Its speed was so fast that there was almost no time to react. Once the situation was brought under control, the team immediately assessed the cause. Food sources on the barren hills had been depleted, forcing the herd to push deeper into human-inhabited areas. The situation was deemed critical. Roads were immediately cordoned off, and a large-scale control operation was deployed in the border zone. Before setting traps, the technical team conducted hours of field surveys. fresh tracks pressed into soft mud, torn strips of tree bark, and deep trenches dug along the forest edge all pointed to the presence of a large herd. Once movement patterns were identified, a reinforced steel hexagonal drop trap was deployed as a reconnaissance tool. With its moderate size, it was used to test reactions and estimate the herd scale. As night fell, at 11:24 p.m., infrared cameras recorded 2 individuals entering the central area. Each weighed nearly 40 kilograms. The activation command was issued immediately. The door slammed shut, securing the 2 targets. However, on the monitor, larger shadows still lingered outside, cautious and unwilling to enter. Clearly, acting too early had made the rest of the herd wary. The strategy was quickly adjusted. This time, a high-strength aluminum alloy box trap was deployed, with an enclosed design to reduce suspicion. The target was no longer the entire herd, but individual animals of large size and aggressive behavior, the most direct threats to the residential area. At around 2 a.m., a massive wild boar appeared, weighing an estimated 300 kilograms. It moved in slowly, then began feeding on fermented corn bait. The trap was triggered. Trapped inside, the animal slammed against the metal walls, producing violent crashes in the night. But the decisive solution lay in the next step. A large-scale circular trap system was erected at the transition zone between the hills and the town. The steel frame, over 2 meters tall and nearly 10 meters in diameter, was suspended above the ground by a cable system. The open design lowered the herd's guard. Fermented grain was spread in a wide circle below. That night, the massive trap proved effective. Around 10 individuals rushed in, pushing and competing for food. Once the entire herd was within range, the system was activated remotely. The steel frame dropped, sealing the space inside. Chaos erupted, but the noise was quickly contained within the enclosed structure. The next morning, just as things seemed to settle down, another emergency call came in. Cameras detected another large group entering a smaller trap. Despite its limited size, the results exceeded expectations. The activation command was issued immediately. With no escape, the entire herd panicked and attempted to break free, but in vain. The steel system had blocked every possible route. The rapid response team quickly approached the site using specialized vehicles. A pickup truck was positioned close to the trap gate. Using long poles, each animal was guided into the transport compartment in a controlled manner, minimizing panic. In cases where individuals were too aggressive and posed danger, on-site safety intervention measures were immediately applied.
Get in.
When the last animal was removed, the tense atmosphere gradually eased. This was not just a routine control operation, but a test of patience, observation, and real-time tactical adaptation. From reading ground signs to understanding how the herd reacted to each type of trap, every detail played a decisive role. Only by truly understanding their behavior could humans regain control of the situation and restore peace to the community. Across the vast fields stretching through central Florida, where the damp ground is frequently torn up as if shaken by a silent underground force, wild boars are no longer just occasional nighttime visitors. They appear in dense numbers, moving in organized groups, leaving behind trails of destruction that cut across the land like invisible scars. At first, the damage is minor and scattered, but within just a few days, entire areas can be completely transformed. The real concern is not the strength of individual animals, but how the entire sounder operates as a system, repeating patterns, precise movements, and becoming increasingly unpredictable over time. In the early stages, single traps were deployed in hopes of quickly controlling the situation. The objective was simple: remove individuals to reduce pressure. But the outcome proved entirely different. After each capture, the remaining boars did not return as expected. Instead, they became more cautious, moved more slowly, and began carefully observing their surroundings before approaching. Small traps, rather than solving the problem, unintentionally forced the entire group to adapt and sharpen its survival instincts. Recognizing the limitations of this approach, a new strategy began to take shape, one that no longer focused on individuals, but on the entire structure of the group. Large-scale trapping systems were designed as open spaces, with steel posts forming wide circular enclosures that did not immediately feel closed. There were no sudden movements, no immediate triggering mechanisms. Everything was arranged to blend naturally into the environment, as if it had always been part of the landscape. The most critical phase was not when the trap was activated, but the period before it. Food was placed outside the area, then gradually moved deeper inside over several days. No intervention took place during this time. The boars began to approach, initially cautious, but gradually becoming familiar. They entered and exited multiple times, observed, retreated, and returned again. Over time, the line between safety and risk slowly faded. Once familiarity reached its peak, the entire group began entering the trap area as part of a normal routine. This was when the human element returned, but not through rushed action. The operator monitored everything through cameras, waiting for a single decisive moment. When every individual was inside the controlled space. No one left outside. No hesitation. Only then was the decision made. The triggering mechanism was executed remotely, fast and precise. A large gate dropped into place, sealing the entire enclosure without leaving any gap for escape. Everything happened in an instant, but behind it were days, even weeks, of preparation. Trigger too early, and part of the group escapes and learns. Trigger too late, and the opportunity disappears. This is not a race of speed, but a test of behavioral understanding. The entire process requires near absolute patience. No human traces, no direct pressure. The environment remains untouched, as if no interference ever occurred. It is this silence that allows the boars to return to their normal patterns. Except this time, everything unfolds within a structure that has already been calculated in advance. When the right moment arrives, a single action is enough to conclude the entire sequence of preparation. The final result is not just about the number of boars captured, but the complete disruption of the group's movement system. Once the structure is removed, the familiar pathways disappear with it. Pressure on farmland is significantly reduced, not because individuals are removed, but because the collective behavior itself has been broken. This shows that the true effectiveness of trapping lies not in the physical mechanism, but in its ability to control behavior on a larger scale. In Columbus, where fields had remained peaceful for decades, no one expected that the sounds in the night would one day signal the beginning of a silent battle. At first, it was only a few strange noises echoing from the edge of the forest, irregular, unpredictable sounds. No one paid much attention, until the following dawn revealed an entirely different scene. The ground was torn up, crops were trampled, and the entire area looked as if it had been struck by an invisible storm overnight. But that was only the beginning. The appearances that followed were no longer scattered. A herd of wild boars began returning in an almost fixed cycle, emerging from the deep forest with a troubling sense of confidence. Fences were broken, rows of crops were plowed through, and months of hard work were gradually erased in just a few hours of darkness. This was no longer a random incident. It was a coordinated, recurring, and increasingly intensifying pressure. Faced with this situation, the response could not be rushed. The first traps were set along the forest's edge, where the animals frequently appeared. But no placement was random. Footprints imprinted in the damp soil, paths repeated night after night, and patches of disturbed ground all became data. Gradually, the scope of control expanded. It no longer stopped at the forest edge. Deeper areas were also brought under observation. Transit routes, resting spots, feeding grounds, all were connected into a tightly monitored system.
We gotta get to
A network began to take shape,
Yeah.
quiet yet precise enough to track every movement. Humans were no longer acting individually. Each person was assigned a specific area and task. Once everything was in place, technology began to show its effectiveness. Motion sensor cameras were installed at strategic points. Every time the herd appeared, every movement was recorded. Nothing missed, nothing assumed. The accumulated data gradually formed a clear picture of the herd's behavior. Instead of triggering the traps immediately, bait was kept inside while the entrances remained open. The boars slowly developed a habit of returning, feeding naturally without realizing that the system was gradually closing in around them. This was no longer a single trap, but a calculated process where timing mattered more than speed. Then the moment finally came. When the entire herd had gathered inside, with no individual left outside, the signal was activated. In an instant, the enclosed system operated in perfect synchronization. Exits were blocked almost simultaneously. A heavy, decisive sound echoed. The gates slammed shut, sealing the entire space within. The reaction was immediate. The herd fell into chaos, moving rapidly and searching for an escape in every direction. But no opening remained. Every path led to the same limit, a closed circle that could not be broken. Their intelligence gradually became ineffective as no viable options remained. Within minutes, the intensity of their resistance began to fade. Movements became scattered, directionless. As everything settled, The entire system had fulfilled its task. No more destruction in the night. No more chaotic traces in the morning. Reports from other areas also began to come in. Control points were operating effectively, stopping other herds before they could cause damage. The most destructive individuals were clearly identified and handled under strict control procedures, ensuring swift action while minimizing stress on the surrounding environment. There was no chaos, no extreme reactions, only decisions based on observation and responsibility. The goal was never total elimination, but control to minimize risk. After that night, calm returned, not only to the fields, but also to the mindset of the entire community. There were no more rushed actions, no more ineffective, isolated efforts. Instead, a clear approach emerged. Observe long enough to understand, be patient enough to wait, and act precisely at the right moment. Because in situations like this, the decisive factor lies not in speed, but in the ability to control timing, when everything is truly ready.
What seemed like a quiet morning on the farm suddenly turned into chaos the moment the farmer stepped outside and saw the entire field torn apart. Rows of crops had been ripped from the ground. The soil churned up as if a violent storm had swept through overnight. But there were no signs of weather, only deep, stretched footprints left behind, pointing to one clear conclusion: the wild boars had returned. They weren't moving randomly. They were following familiar paths, repeating the same routes night after night like a pattern already set in motion. At first, the damage was small and scattered. A corner of the field disturbed, a few rows of crops overturned. But it didn't take long for things to escalate. The destruction grew more severe, and the boars began appearing in larger numbers, moving in organized groups, taking turns rooting through the soil in search of food. What worried the farmer wasn't just the scale of the damage, but how quickly they adapted. They learned to recognize danger, avoided simple traps, and even shifted their activity hours to stay out of human sight. One of the oldest methods used to deal with them is the cable snare trap. Steel cables are carefully hidden beneath a thin layer of soil, placed directly along the boar's regular travel routes. When an animal steps into position, the loop tightens almost instantly. No sound, no warning, just a fast and precise mechanism. But setting these traps requires a deep understanding of boar behavior, from how they move to the exact spots where they pause to sniff and assess their surroundings. Even so, snare traps only deal with individual animals. When entire sounders keep returning, farmers are forced to scale up their approach. That's when large net traps come into play, systems designed to capture multiple animals at once. A wide circular net is set up around a baited area, with the net initially lifted off the ground, so the boars can move in and out freely without triggering suspicion. For days, food is placed at the center while the trap remains open. The boars enter, feed, and leave without consequence. Slowly, a sense of safety builds. Then, at the right moment, when the entire group has moved deep inside, the system is triggered. The net drops in seconds, enclosing the entire sounder at once. No escape, no second chance. The response is simply too fast for them to adapt. In areas with especially high populations, metal corral traps offer a more stable solution. Built from heavy steel panels, these enclosures create a controlled space with a one-way gate, allowing boars to enter but not exit. The design takes advantage of their instinct. Once they see food ahead, they move forward without hesitation, step by step, deeper into the trap. These traps are typically placed along the edges where forest meets farmland, natural crossing points the boars use regularly. Bait is positioned deep inside, forcing them to commit fully. Once one enters, others quickly follow, creating a chain reaction. In a single night, an entire group can be contained without triggering panic, preserving the structure of the herd. What sets these methods apart is not just their effectiveness, but their strategy. Instead of direct confrontation, farmers rely on the boar's own habits and instincts to control them. Each trap is more than just a tool. It's the result of careful observation, testing, and constant adjustment based on specific terrain and environmental conditions. This is a quiet form of control, unseen, methodical, and dependent on patience and precision. When traps are placed in the right location at the right time, they don't just reduce damage, they help restore balance between humans and the environment. And the question remains, can people stay one step ahead, or will they always be adapting to the ever-changing behavior of wild boars?
Pigs gone wild. Researchers found that Texas has the worst feral hog problem in the entire country. Pigs gone wild. Researchers found that Texas has the worst feral hog problem in the entire country.
But then something strange began to happen. Across Texas, Georgia, and Oklahoma, entire groups of wild hogs started disappearing. They weren't being pushed into neighboring counties. Their numbers weren't slowly declining. They were vanishing completely. Sounders of 30, even 40 animals that had dominated the land for years suddenly disappeared without a trace. The traps were still there, untouched. Even wildlife agencies couldn't explain it.
Well, pigs are everywhere down in Texas, aren't they?
You know, you've got these populations exploding throughout time, but really kind of...
It wasn't until a research team in Blanco County set up a network of surveillance cameras that things began to make sense. 3 weeks later, when they retrieved the data, the lead researcher immediately told the team to leave the site. Not because it was dangerous, but because what the cameras had captured was too unexpected and too valuable. Even the slightest human scent could alert the predators and make them disappear. The footage had the potential to completely change how people viewed the fight against wild hogs. But to understand it, you have to go back to where it all started. In the early 1900s, wealthy landowners brought Eurasian wild boars into the U.S. for sport hunting.
Who either has tuscache or thinks we're a little...
When they crossbred with feral domestic pigs already roaming the South, a dangerous hybrid emerged, faster, tougher, and reproducing at a rate that even researchers found alarming. Today, the United States Department of Agriculture estimates there are around 6.9 million wild hogs spread across at least 35 states. In Texas alone, there are about 2.66 million, found in 253 out of 254 counties. There's almost nowhere left in the state without their tracks. And these aren't timid or easily controlled animals. They move fast, tear through fences, and push past obstacles to get to food. A rancher named Norman, who manages over 700 acres in Texas, tried everything: cage traps, fermented corn, even hunting dogs. But wild hogs learn quickly. They remember trap locations, recognize human patterns, and become more cautious every time they escape. Norman once said fighting wild hogs is like trying to stop a flood with a handheld sponge. And he wasn't wrong. So when entire groups of hogs began disappearing across multiple states with no clear cause, wildlife agencies weren't celebrating. They were confused. There was no data to explain it. That's why in 2014, the team in Blanco County launched a full camera monitoring system. They wanted to know exactly what was happening out there 3 weeks later. Sitting around a laptop and reviewing the footage clip by clip, they finally got their answer. The culprit was coyote, but not lone scavengers wandering for food like people often assume. These were highly coordinated hunting groups, moving with such precision that the research team was nearly stunned watching the footage. The timing of their attacks wasn't random either. It all happened just before dawn, a window the coyotes seemed to have calculated carefully, when mother hogs were at their weakest after a full night of rooting and feeding. They had identified this vulnerability and were repeating the strategy systematically in areas with high hog density.
Made the research team go completely quiet.
At the same time, wildlife biologist Sarah Cunningham in Georgia analyzed DNA from coyote scat. Samples collected across multiple counties showed piglet DNA in over 30% of them. In East Texas, more than 30% of piglets disappeared each season in areas with the highest coyote density. In parts of Oklahoma and Georgia, wild hog populations dropped by as much as 20%. What's remarkable is that all of this happened without any new control programs, added funding, or different types of traps. Coyotes were creating natural pressure on wild hog populations in a way humans hadn't anticipated. And that's when another question started to emerge. If coyotes are quietly reducing wild hog numbers, why did some states later begin paying residents to eliminate them? What exactly were they trying to prevent? Subscribe to the channel and like the video to catch the next part.
Indigenous to this country over 500 years ago.
No longer small signs that can be easily ignored. In Texas, everything changes overnight. During the day, the fields remain quiet, but when the sun sets, an invisible force begins to move. By morning, the soil is torn apart, crops crushed as if a storm had passed through. Overlapping tracks appear like a map, showing it's not just one, but an entire organized herd at work. From above, everything becomes clearer. A helicopter flies low, sweeping across forests in vast Texas farmland. From this angle, the invisible roads used by wild boars each night begin to reveal themselves. Movement paths repeated with near precision, connecting deep forests to the heart of cultivated land. They do not move randomly. They learn, and with each passing night, they grow bolder. That is when the plan is deployed. Not a rushed reaction, but a carefully calculated strategy, step by step. Traps are not placed randomly. They are positioned along the exact routes identified from the air. Bait is layered carefully, guiding the herd deeper without triggering alarm. The goal is not to catch a few, but to control the entire herd in a single operation. On the first night, the first trap is triggered. A small group is contained at the edge of the field. As the team approaches, a difference becomes immediately clear. Variations in fur patterns show that multiple groups have merged into a larger herd. This is a dangerous sign. When smaller groups combine, the level of destruction increases exponentially. And without timely action, this area will become a permanent food source.
Hey!
But not every animal reacts the same. Some panic, charging straight into the steel frame as if trying to break through. Others stay quiet, using their snouts to test each bar, searching for weaknesses. This is not just instinct, it is adaptation. And that is what makes controlling wild boars more difficult than almost any other species that...
Bear. Lost one. Bear's after it. There it goes.
AKT another location. A smaller trap is also active. It does not need to be large, only correctly placed. The confined space prevents the herd from coordinating as they would in the open. This is the key point, not the strength of the trap, but how it aligns with herd behavior. A small miscalculation, and the entire system can fail out on its... Second night, pressure begins to rise. From the helicopter, the control team monitors every subtle movement. A large individual appears, slower, more cautious. It does not rush in. It circles, pauses, checks every detail. This is likely the leader, and if it detects danger, the entire herd could disappear within seconds. But this time, the bait works perfectly. It steps inside, and in an instant, the gate slams shut. The metallic sound echoes like the final mark on a long chain of destruction. However, not everything goes perfectly. At another trap, a few animals hesitate before entering. Just 1 second of doubt, and they turn back, rushing into the forest. This is reality. No system reaches 100%, but perfection was never the goal. The objective is to break the herd structure, reduce their coordination and destructive impact. by the next morning, the work continues. The traps are secured, each animal handled under strict procedures and transported away from the farming area. No rush, no emotional reaction. Everything is controlled, following regulations. This is not hunting. This is management. It is how people protect what they have built after months of labor. This is not a loud battle. It is a silent confrontation between instinct and strategy, between chaos and control. And in that confrontation, victory is not measured by how many are captured, but by whether they ever return again.
At first, everything was seen as just a minor incident, a one-time nighttime intrusion. But as the footprints began to repeat, as one garden after another was torn up in the same way, people gradually realized that this was no longer random. Wild boars do not move aimlessly. They follow familiar paths, returning to places where they had previously found food. With each passing night, the traces overlapped with old ones, like an invisible map being redrawn with unsettling precision. That repetition completely changed how the locals perceived the situation. Once wildlife had formed habits, the question was no longer whether they would return, but how to break the cycle. And when the boars appeared in groups, isolated responses from individual households quickly became meaningless. Conversations between neighbors became more frequent. Experience was shared, data was connected. Each footprint, each damaged area, each movement route gradually formed pieces of a larger picture. It did not take long for people to understand that they were facing a shared problem, a structured behavioral system rather than isolated incidents. Familiar measures such as making noise or building fences only brought temporary results. The boars might slow down, but they did not give up. They learned to adapt, find detours, and return when things became quiet. At that point, the problem had already exceeded the control of any individual. In that context, an important decision was made. Instead of acting separately, the entire community would coordinate as a unified system. Landowners, farmers, and residents came together, compiling all observations and agreeing on a common strategy. The goal was no longer to handle individual animals, but to control the entire herd. A large-scale enclosure trap was established, based entirely on the routes the wild boars had repeatedly followed over many days. The trap was designed to be spacious enough not to cause panic, yet still ensure that all movement remained under control. A sturdy steel frame was reinforced to withstand strong impacts when the gate closed. There was no rush or force. Instead, people allowed the boars' natural habits to guide them into the prepared area. Day by day, patience became the decisive factor. The trapping system did not operate in a fully automatic way. Instead, technology was used as a supporting tool to improve accuracy. Surveillance cameras streamed live footage, allowing people to monitor every movement remotely. The trap gate was controlled via smartphones, enabling them to choose the exact moment of intervention. Nothing was done impulsively. Everything was based on careful observation and precise timing. They did not rush. They observed every movement, every subtle reaction. And only when the entire herd had entered inside, when no individual remained outside, was the decision made. A single action, and all gates closed simultaneously. No chaos, no omissions. The entire system operated exactly as it had been calculated in advance. At dawn, people returned to check the site. Everything had gone according to plan. There were no signs of damage, no escape routes left open. More importantly, the area had returned to a stable state after weeks of continuous disruption. The gardens were no longer dug up every night. Farming families could finally feel reassured that their land and crops were being protected. But this story is not only about controlling a herd of wild boars. It reflects how humans adapt when the environment changes. When a challenge exceeds the capacity of individuals, the solution does not lie in rushed reactions, but in coordination, understanding, and patience at the community level. Because sometimes, protecting what you have is not about acting the fastest, but about acting at the right moment, with precise control and a collective willing to stand together.